When you picture someone making a huge investment decision, what do you see? Complex charts, a sea of spreadsheets, right? Analysts crunching numbers around the clock? Well, yeah, that's definitely part of it. But what if I told you the real reasons behind those big money moves are a lot more human? Let's get into it. And that really gets to the heart of the question, doesn't it? Is investing just a math problem? For decades, the entire world of finance has pretty much been built on this idea that it's a numbers game, a problem you can solve if you just have the right formula and perfect cold logic. But is that really how it goes down when millions of dollars are actually on the line? So on one side, you've got this idea of the textbook investor. This is the perfectly rational person, almost a robot, who lives in a world of clean, abstract models. And then, on the other side, you've got the real-world manager. This is someone who's constantly dealing with uncertainty, who has to rely on people, and who's got to read the room, read the whole environment. So which one is really calling the shots? All right, so first, let's just dive into this myth, the idea of the perfect investor. This is the character you meet on page 1 of pretty much every finance textbook. It's this vision of a world where everything is neat, tidy, and can be calculated down to the last decimal point. And the absolute cornerstone of this whole myth is something called modern portfolio theory. The big idea here is that you can build the perfect portfolio just by mathematically balancing risk and return. Honestly, it's kind of like trying to build a championship sports team using only player stats, right? You'd be completely ignoring things like, team chemistry or how a player performs under immense pressure. But here's the kicker. As researchers pointed out a while back, these classic theories are basically built around a gambling metaphor. They treat investing like a game at a casino, just a series of calculated bets. And that right there is the problem, isn't it? Real life is not a casino. The rules are messy, you never have all the information, and believe me, the stakes are a whole lot higher. Okay, so let's get out of the casino and onto the real playing field. We're going to leave those clean, theoretical models behind and jump right into the thick of it. A world that's dynamic, uncertain, and, let's be honest, pretty unpredictable. And our guide for this journey comes from this really fascinating case study. Researchers took a deep dive into how investment managers in Nigeria's insurance industry actually make their decisions. Now, this isn't some lab experiment. This is the real deal, how high-stakes choices are made every day in a complex, developing economy. And just look at the kind of environment they're working in. We're talking about high inflation, not having all the data you need, being under intense time pressure, social and political instability. Oh, and your goals are constantly shifting. You can start to see how a simple risk-return formula just isn't going to cut it here, right? So how in the world do they do it? Well, it turns out they play by a completely different set of rules. The researchers discovered that these managers, they weren't using the old textbook playbook at all. They had created a new one that goes way, way beyond simple formulas. And what's so cool about this research is they managed to boil this whole new playbook down to one number, 6. That's it. Just 6 core concepts that are the true guides for how these managers invest millions and millions of dollars. These 6 concepts, when you put them together, they create something you could call a human algorithm. It's a framework for making decisions that's built not just on numbers, but on really human things. Judgments about people, a deep-seated need for safety, and the critical importance of a stable environment. The first 2 concepts pretty much flip the whole script on maximizing profit. For these managers, the number 1 and 2 priorities are consistency of returns and the security of the investment itself. So get this, it's not about hitting home runs. It's all about not striking out. And this mindset was captured perfectly by a researcher named Bob Gunn. He found that managers just naturally put more weight on the negatives, what might go wrong, than they do on the potential positives. It's a deeply conservative approach, and it's all about protecting the capital first. Okay, so the next factors are the ones you will almost never see in a traditional financial model: people. For these managers, figuring out who's in charge and leveraging who you know, that's an absolutely mission-critical part of the whole process. And this really breaks down into 3 people-first principles. First, they are obsessed with the competency of management. They judge leaders by their track record.
Second, they rely heavily on association and relationships. They use their social networks to get inside information and to find new deals. Social capital is a real, tangible asset here. And third, everything they do has to exist within the strict boundaries of legal control, because the rules and regulations are a huge part of their reality.
And this isn't some new radical idea. The sociologist Mark Granovetter argued decades ago that social connections aren't just a distraction from the real economic work. No, they are fundamental to it. They can be the very catalyst that sparks economic change and dictates where the money flows. And that brings us to the sixth and final piece of this puzzle, everything happening outside the boardroom. These managers know, deep down, that you just can't make a good investment in an unstable environment. The political and social climate, it's not just background noise. It is a crucial piece of data you have to factor into any big decision. So here it is, all laid out. This is the real-world decision framework. You start with this foundation of consistency and security. Then you make sure you're operating within the law. And then you layer on these incredibly important human judgments about the people in charge, the value of your relationships, and the stability of the entire environment. It's a whole world away from just plugging numbers into a spreadsheet, isn't it? Okay, so let's bring this all home. Why does a study about Nigerian insurance managers matter to the rest of us? What's the big takeaway for you and me? And I think a really fair question to ask here is, so what? Does this mean we should just chuck all the financial models and spreadsheets out the window and just go with our gut? No, not at all. The data is still so incredibly important. But what this research is this powerful reminder that numbers don't exist in a vacuum. Behind every single number, every projection on a spreadsheet, there is a human story, a web of relationships, and a real-world context that gives that number its true meaning. And that brings us to this final, really powerful idea, summed up perfectly by Caroline Zambach. She calls it naturalistic decision-making. And it's all about how experienced people, real people, not theoretical robots, navigate these messy, uncertain environments to make decisions that actually have meaningful consequences. It puts human judgment right back where it belongs, at the very center of finance. And it's a reminder that maybe the most powerful investment tool we have isn't a calculator, it's skilled human judgment.